The first warning sign wasn't a phone call or an email. It was a viral TikTok. Yep, you read that right. I was stationed overseas in the middle of nowhere. Hot, dusty, hostile territory, when one of my squad mates handed me his phone and said, "Bro, is this your house?" It was. A TikTok influencer, some 20-something Karen lookalike in a pink romper and heels too tall for grass, was giving a tour of my living room. She called it a quaint luxury stay in a gated community with hardwood floors, minimalist art, and a rustic military chic vibe. Military chic. That was my grandfather's folded flag on the mantel, my mom's photo on the wall, and my dog's bed she was walking past like it was a Target display. I almost blacked out. My heart was pounding harder than the mortar rounds we'd dodged earlier that week. Then came the caption. At Lux Escape Properties, DM to book this adorable Lakeview getaway. I hadn't rented out my house. I hadn't given anyone permission. I was 7,000 miles away in a hostile zone, and someone had broken in, furnished it, and turned my home into a freaking Airbnb. And guess who I found at the root of it all? The HOA. Back before deployment, I had bought that little lake house in a quiet neighborhood with an HOA. They weren't too strict, or so I thought. I paid the dues on time, didn't rock the boat. I kept the grass cut, mailbox straight, and never parked on the street. But the second I deployed with my unit, it was like a shark smelled blood in the water. First, I got a notice that my lawn was overgrown and violating community standards. Then came a demand to remove all personal signage, by which they meant the American flag I'd flown for years without issue. I had my buddy Dave, a retired Marine who lived nearby, check on the place weekly. He kept everything in check and sent me pics. It was fine, pristine, until 2 months into deployment, radio silence. Dave stopped replying. I later learned why. According to neighbors, Dave had shown up one day and been trespassed off the property by security guards, hired by the HOA. They claimed he wasn't the authorized contact and that the home had transferred into temporary rental status. Excuse me? Transferred? Like hell it had. They used a clause buried deep in the HOA bylaws that said if a home was unoccupied beyond 45 days without arranged maintenance or response, the HOA could initiate emergency property control to preserve community standards. But instead of preserving anything, they turned my place into a cash cow. They changed the locks, moved in generic furniture, painted over MY accent wall, and got cozy with a luxury property management firm. A few rich moms from uptown even started throwing parties in my backyard while I was dodging sniper fire in another country. And it gets worse. My neighbor Monica, bless her heart, snuck some photos and videos. One night, she overheard the HOA president, Linda Harrington, bragging at a wine night. He's not coming back for a year. Why let it go to waste? We can pay ourselves a little rental fee for the hassle. They even split the profits between HOA board members under the table. The renters? Most of them didn't even know it was an illegal setup. They thought they were booking a legit luxury Airbnb. So when I tried calling HOA from base, no answer. When I emailed, due to overseas IP security, your message was blocked. Are you kidding me? That was the moment something snapped in me. I wasn't just going to take legal action. I was going to take back my home, and I wasn't going to do it alone. My leave was coming up in 6 weeks, and I had a squad of very angry, very loyal men itching to stretch their legs stateside. I started planning. We called it Operation Homefront, and it was about to become the HOA's worst nightmare. The night we landed back in the U.S., we didn't waste time. Our boots touched ground, and 48 hours later, we were suited up in civvies, pulling up to my house in 4 trucks. I had coordinated it down to the second. Dave, who had been waiting for this day, met us in a rental van across the street. He handed me a spare key he'd hidden years ago in a fake rock in the garden. The HOA never found it. Let's do this, I said. The boys? Oh, they were ready. These weren't frat bros or TikTok vigilantes. These were trained infantrymen with medals, muscle, and zero patience for HOA corruption. We breached the back gate quietly, no damage, then split into fire teams. Inside, a 23-year-old influencer couple were live streaming a pancake tutorial in my kitchen. They shrieked as my guys came through the door, calm but firm. "Hands up, you're trespassing in a federal officer's home," I said, flashing my ID. "This is not a rental property. This house was unlawfully occupied." They babbled about bookings and listings and how Linda said it was fine. We gave them 10 minutes to grab their stuff and leave. They did. They ran, barefoot. But that was just step one. The house was a mess. Not trashy, but violated. It smelled like cheap perfume and cologne. My photos were gone. Walls repainted in trendy TikTok beige. And the refrigerator was full of vegan milk and imported cheese. So we fixed it. The boys worked overnight. Put all MY furniture back. Dave had stored it in his garage. Scrubbed the walls, rehung my flags. We even steam cleaned the carpets and reseeded the backyard. It was a full-blown restoration. But we weren't done. At 8 a.m. sharp, Linda Harrington showed up, clipboard in hand, expecting to greet the new guests. She froze mid-step when she saw 6 soldiers on the porch, arms crossed, sunglasses on, standing like a damn Special Forces welcome party. You can't be here," she shouted, backing up. "This property is under HOA rental control." I stepped forward, calm, collected. "Linda, you broke at least 6 state laws and committed civil trespass and fraud. This is my home, and unless you want to explain your side in front of a judge, I'd recommend you shut up and get off my porch." She tried to argue, said I abandoned the property. I handed her a certified letter from my lawyer, outlining her crimes, complete with time-stamped photos, videos, and neighbor testimony. She turned pale. The squad? They didn't say a word, just stared her down. She left in silence. That afternoon, we filed an emergency injunction with the county. 3 weeks later, the HOA was slapped with a $220,000 lawsuit. Turns out I wasn't the only deployed service member they'd done this to. 2 others came forward, 1 Navy, 1 Air Force. We joined forces. Turns out, the HOA president had made over $80,000 in under-the-table management fees, renting out military-owned homes. Linda was arrested on charges of wire fraud, unlawful subletting, and violating the Service Members Civil Relief Act. She lost her position, her money, and eventually her home. Guess who bought it at the county auction 6 months later? Dave, for $20,000. He painted it red, white, and blue and turned it into a veterans coffee bar. I'm still in the military, still serving. But now, my house is mine again. I installed steel shutters, a security system, and cameras that send live feeds straight to my phone, even from a desert bunker. The HOA, completely restructured. New board, new rules. No more unauthorized rentals. And Linda, last I heard, she was living in an RV behind her cousin's place, writing angry Yelp reviews about ungrateful veterans. Linda's silence didn't last long. 3 days after our confrontation, a manila envelope showed up taped to my door. Inside, a cease and desist letter from the HOA's new legal representative. According to them, I had intimidated community staff, illegally occupied a rental unit, and created a hostile environment in a peaceful residential area. I laughed. I couldn't help it. The irony was absurd. I handed it straight to my lawyer, who scanned the document and chuckled. "This isn't a legal notice," he said. "It's a bluff, meant to scare you. If anything, it adds fuel to your claim." But I wasn't laughing the next morning. Someone threw a brick through my living room window. Wrapped around it was a note scribbled in red Sharpie. "You don't belong here anymore." They didn't sign it, but I didn't need them to. The handwriting matched a previous HOA notice I still had on file, one that Linda herself had hand-delivered a year ago when I had installed a taller flagpole. This wasn't just civil corruption anymore. This was turning personal. And when it turns personal, I don't play defense. That night, the squad came back over. We set up a 24-hour watch, 3-hour shifts, rotating silently, quietly. We didn't make noise. We didn't start anything. But we watched. And sure enough, on night 2, a car rolled up at 3:47 a.m. No headlights. Someone stepped out with something in their hands. Probably paint. They didn't see Rico, 6'3", built like a wrecking ball, who came around the side of the garage and just stood behind him. The guy froze. "Put the can down," Rico said calmly. The guy nearly peed himself. Turned out he was Linda's nephew. His name was Kyle. College dropout. No job. Claimed he was just doing a favor. We took his photo, took down his plates, and let him go. Then we filed a report. The police were finally interested now that there was vandalism and attempted property damage, and since we had everything documented, including video footage, it stuck. But Linda wasn't done. 2 days later, a vote was announced by the HOA board, a proposal to formally ban short-term rentals by non-local owners and issue fines retroactively to disruptive residents. The wording was vague, but the intent was clear. They were coming after me again, this time by technicality. What they didn't know was that I'd already gathered 11 homeowners who had either been wronged, harassed, or manipulated by Linda's board in the past 2 years. Many had been too scared to speak before, but now, with Linda exposed and legal eyes on the HOA, they were emboldened. We organized. We showed up to the meeting early, every one of us. Full quorum. The community hall had never been that full before, packed with neighbors, veterans, parents, retirees. And when Linda tried to speak, she was met with silence. Then questions. Then accusations. I didn't say much. I didn't need to. I let the others speak. About the backdoor rentals, the forged notices, the illegal fee hikes. Someone brought up the service member protection laws. Another read a statement from an attorney general's office. The vote. Not only did the proposal fail, Linda was voted off the board entirely. 3 other members resigned that night before they could be investigated. We elected a new board on the spot. Monica, my neighbor, became president. Dave, treasurer. The HOA bylaws were scheduled for revision, with an outside legal observer. It should have ended there. But a week later, I got an email from the property management company that had been renting out my house. They weren't done either. According to them, I owed back revenue from the bookings that took place while I was deployed, nearly $28,000, because my name was on the property. And by their logic, profits from occupancy default to the legal owner unless otherwise waived. I stared at the screen in disbelief. They had the audacity to claim I owed them money for renting out my own home without permission. I forwarded it to my lawyer immediately. His reply was one line. They just admitted to every charge in writing. Now we had them. Between that email and the HOA's own signed contracts with the management firm, it was a clear pattern. Organized fraud, knowingly renting out homes owned by deployed military personnel without permission or payment. The case became federal. That was when everything changed. The federal investigation kicked off faster than I expected. Within 10 days, subpoenas went out to the HOA board's email accounts, bank records, and personal devices. Turns out, this wasn't the first time the Lux Escape firm had worked with shady HOAs. In fact, there were at least 3 other neighborhoods flagged for similar activity, all with at least one board member acting as a silent partner. And guess who the common denominator was? Linda. She had quietly started an LLC 2 years earlier, one that consulted with short-term rental companies to optimize community properties for value. Translation: she made thousands off every illegally subleased home and funneled profits into accounts under different family members' names. I was called in for a formal statement at the federal building downtown. My lawyer sat beside me while I walked through everything: the TikTok video, the influencer, the fake rental, the vandalism, and especially that smug letter claiming I owed them money. The agent listening didn't say much, but when I showed him the email from Lux Escape, his eyebrows lifted. "That's enough to indict at least 2 of them right now," he said. "You may have just cracked a much bigger case than you realize." Back home, the atmosphere shifted. Neighbors I barely knew stopped by to shake my hand, thank me, offer pie, coffee, even help with yard work. Some admitted they'd always suspected the HOA was corrupt, but hadn't known how deep it went. One older couple told me their granddaughter's graduation party had been shut down mid-celebration last year because it violated noise ordinances, even though there were no such violations on record. Linda had simply not approved it. The deeper we looked, the darker it got. Documents revealed that over $130,000 in community funds had been reallocated by Linda and her crew over the last 18 months, supposedly for maintenance and landscaping. But the company they paid, R&L Outdoor Services, a shell company. No website, no employees, just a P.O. box in the next county, traced back to Linda's cousin. It was theft, plain and simple. The new board held an emergency community meeting. Monica read off a full financial report compiled by an outside accountant, and people gasped out loud at the figures. Refunds were owed. Lawsuits were piling up. And still, Linda had the nerve to show up at that meeting, sitting in the back, oversized sunglasses on, arms crossed like a bitter soap opera villain. She didn't speak, but her silence was louder than anything she could have said. That night, I came home to find my mailbox smashed. Again. Only this time, there was no note. Just shards of ceramic from a garden gnome, the same kind Linda had in her yard. I reported it. The cops didn't even hesitate. They filed it as part of the ongoing investigation. At this point, I wasn't even mad. I was focused. Precise. Like we were back in the field, dismantling a target, one piece at a time. That week, subpoenas were served in person. 2 former HOA board members were arrested on the spot for falsifying financial records. Luxescape's local office was shut down pending charges. Linda, she was officially named in the federal case, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, embezzlement, and violations of the Service Member Civil Relief Act. Her mugshot hit the local news like wildfire. And suddenly, everyone had an opinion. The same neighbors who once nodded politely at HOA meetings were now on Facebook, Twitter, and Nextdoor blasting her behavior, posting screenshots of bogus notices, and calling for full reform. It was like a dam had broken. And as for me, I was just glad to sleep in my own bed again. The squad had slowly gone back to their families, their bases, their lives. Rico sent me a picture of his toddler holding a toy tank and saluting. Dave brought over a 6-pack and told me he was finally applying to be a sheriff's deputy. But I wasn't done, because what they did to me could still happen to someone else, someone without the support, the proof, or the squad to back them up. So I decided to make sure it wouldn't. I started by calling the State Veterans Affairs office. I asked a simple question. How many deployed service members in HOA communities had reported legal or housing issues in the last 5 years? They didn't give me a number right away. But 2 days later, a woman named Karen Wexler, a legal advocate, called me back. Her voice was steady but serious. We've had dozens of complaints just like yours. Most of them don't get resolved. It's hard to fight HOA boards when you're thousands of miles away and unreachable. I told her everything, not just about my house, but about the others in the neighborhood who had been quietly extorted, misled, and fined for rules that didn't even exist. About the forged rental agreements, about Linda's LLCs, about the kid with the paint can and the brick through my window. Karen paused and then said something that changed everything. You know, if you're willing to testify, we can move this up the chain. That same week, I was invited to speak, via video call, before a House subcommittee on housing and veteran protections. Nothing formal, just testimony. But it meant eyes were on this. Big ones. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I told them exactly how it happened, that while I was deployed for my country, an HOA illegally seized my house, rented it out for profit, and tried to bill me for it when I came home. They listened. After that, things escalated fast. News stations started requesting interviews. I declined most of them, but I agreed to one, a small local channel that had done honest reporting on HOA overreach before. We filmed the interview right on my front porch. No dramatics, just the truth. That interview aired on a Thursday. By Saturday, I had 24 new voicemails. One was from a Marine who'd lost his condo in Florida during a deployment and had been living in a trailer ever since. Another was from a widow whose husband's home had been auctioned while she was out of state burying him. I realized this wasn't about me anymore. It never really had been. That following Monday, I filed paperwork to form a nonprofit, Homefront Watch, a legal and advocacy network for active duty and veteran homeowners wronged by HOAs and property management firms. Within a week, we had our first donations. Mostly small, $10 here, $25 there. But some came with handwritten notes. Thank you for standing up. My brother needed this years ago. I wish someone had done this sooner. We partnered with 2 veteran-owned law firms and a retired JAG who agreed to consult pro bono. Our mission was simple. If an HOA tried this again, anywhere in the country, we would make noise. We would sue. We would show up. And we would win. Meanwhile, Linda's legal battle kept unraveling. Her defense attorney tried to argue she'd misinterpreted the bylaws and believed she had the authority to manage empty properties. But the financial record said otherwise. One transaction showed $7,800 from a rental deposited straight into her daughter's tuition fund. Another showed $2,000 wired to a private spa account. Not exactly emergency law and maintenance. During one of the hearings, Linda finally spoke. Her voice was hoarse, her hands trembling. It wasn't supposed to go that far, she said. I just wanted to improve the neighborhood, make it more valuable. The judge didn't even blink. He reminded her that the Service Members Civil Relief Act wasn't optional, that housing theft was still theft, and that no amount of curb appeal justified turning active duty soldiers into victims. She was sentenced to 2 years probation, a hefty fine, and full restitution to the victims, including me. I didn't care about the money. I used it to set up emergency housing grants through Homefront Watch. Linda disappeared from town not long after that. Her house sat empty for months until a young couple, both Navy vets, bought it at auction. They invited me over for burgers and thanked me for making the neighborhood safe again. But I never felt like a hero. I felt like someone who had to do what should have been done long ago. And the truth is, even after all of it, I still sleep with one eye open. Not because I'm scared, but because I know how fast safety can be taken from you. By a pen stroke, a crooked clause, a forged contract. And I made a promise that no deployed soldier would ever come home to find strangers living in their bed while a smug HOA president cashed their rent check. 1 year later, I stood at the edge of my porch, coffee in hand, looking out over a yard that was finally completely mine again. No strangers coming and going. No bogus fines taped to the door. No HOA goons with clipboards counting my flower pots or measuring my flagpole height. Just quiet. Just home. Homefront Watch had grown faster than I ever expected. We now had a full-time legal team, a volunteer network in over 10 states, and had helped more than 60 families push back against corrupt HOAs. Some cases were small, like stopping surprise fines. Others were huge, like blocking illegal foreclosures and helping vets win back the homes they'd built with their own hands. And it all started because someone thought they could rent out my house while I was deployed. Linda vanished from the public eye after sentencing. Last I heard, she was living in a rental 2 counties over, barred from holding any position in any HOA again. Her silence has been her only smart decision in years. Sometimes I still get messages, people asking, was it worth it? The lawyer fees, the threats, the fights, the stress. Yeah, it was worth it. Because the next time some slimy HOA thinks they can roll over a soldier just because he's out of the country, they'll remember my name. And more importantly, they'll remember we don't back down. And if you're dealing with anything like this, if you're getting pushed around, lied to, locked out of your own house, or just tired of the endless HOA power games, you're not alone. That's why I shared this story. So if you want more real stories, more wins, and more proof that the little guy can fight back, hit that like button and subscribe. It helps us reach more people, spread the word, and make sure no one else comes home to find their life turned into someone else's profit. Thanks for sticking with me. I'll see you in the next one.